My name is Susie Bogle, and I am the owner and senior HR business partner for Breathing Space HR. Do let me know if you can hear me properly. It's a new system that we're using today, Zoom, so I'm just checking everything out. Hi, Steve, have you got a question? Right.
All right. Yeah, no, I was just raising my hand to say that so I could hear you.
Thank you very much. That's actually really good for me because I was a little bit kind of distressed with the change in provider. So anyway, I will continue on and I'll just mute you, Steve. Thank you so much. Right. Okay. So stress and employee well-being. I've been in HR for over 20 years. I got my 20 years service award from the CIPD. I've been dealing with employees who have been under pressure and stressed for all of that time. It's nothing new in the work environment. It's something that is much more talked about, and we now know how heavily it actually impacts on people at work and how well your business actually works. So I'm coming from a very, very grounded HR point of view about stress at work. So we're going to talk about the HR methodology. I'm not one for going into employee engagement, all the frills around things. These are about the basics of good management, which will actually relieve a lot of the stress that may be occurring in your business. So, firstly, let's talk about what actually is stress. Now, stress doesn't only occur in workplace, but it occurs outside life as well. But we already know that what happens outside work for an employee, they bring it all into work. So you have to be looking holistically at the person. Situations which create stress can be running from daily annoyances, being overstretched, time pressured, all the rest of the things that provide a little bit of anxiety to our day-to-day. Now, people can deal with levels of stress, and that's really very much independent and individualistic to that individual. Some people work at a very high level of stress, and some people prefer not to have any stress in their work lives at all. And then it's down to their choice of job, which will actually encourage either a good work-life balance or provide stress in their life. Stress can be defined as the inability to cope with a perceived threat, real or imagined, to one's mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It's interesting they put spiritual well-being in there. I like that acknowledgement that you know, a lot of people have a spiritual life around what they do, and you know, pressures outside of their lives can actually affect their emotional well-being, which combines with their spiritual well-being. This can be as minor as being overworked by 20% on a daily basis. It can be major as having a major life event like losing one's spouse. So we have to consider that all of these things, however minor, and it's also about self-perception. Remember that you are an individual as a manager, that your levels of stress may be entirely different to your employees or your colleagues' ability to cope with stress. So you have to be quite empathic when you're dealing with somebody with stress, to put aside your own abilities to cope with just life in general and focus on that individual. So examples of stress: financial, marital, work, health related. We all know these basic things that can create stress. As I said, you know, people have different levels of stress. It's usually described on a graph, which is a slow incline, and people have an optimum ability to cope with stress, and that varies for that individual. So we have to understand that other people are different on that line, and a level of stress can be highly beneficial when you can cope with it, because it provides energy, it provides interest, it provides a little bit of adrenaline to your role. But that continuous pressure on your physical and mental ability to cope with these things does decrease over time. So the feelings that usually come about are anxiety, lack of sleep, distrust, anger, and when people go to the extremes of stress, it can promote other mental health illnesses like depression or anxiety. So we have to understand where it all comes from, but we're dealing primarily at work. So, right, stress in the workplace. So as I've been describing, everybody has different levels, but these are generally the elements which will actually create stress. High workloads and unrealistic deadlines. We do a lot of work around that basic piece of information, acronym SMART. So if your deadlines are SMART, i.e. realistic and agreed, with all the other elements involved, you will actually reduce people's stress. Lack of control, so no control over that high workload, insufficient experience or training. We're very focused in HR on making sure that people not only understand the job they're going into through the recruitment process, but then through the induction process, make sure that they have all the levels of training that enable them to do their work sufficiently. Everything happens in business, and sometimes it's not always positive. So when a business is going through strife, and there might be elements of job security, lack of career opportunities, or levels of pay, then those will also create things that create stress. Also with job security, you will find that when you're going into a performance management process with anybody, or even just a disciplinary for a conduct issue or a one-off event, that is very, very stressful, and also creates an element of not knowing whether you have any job security, whether that be down the line after a process or immediate because the employee's done something stupid. I always like to say it's gross stupidity, not gross misconduct, because I feel that everybody knows the rules and they know how to behave at work. So, but the individual will be very stressed in those situations. Of course, bullying harassment will provide stress. Full stop. So managing those relationships with managers and their colleagues is very important. Also, managers have to take their part in this, because if they are weak, ineffective, or overmanage, then they will create stress within their team and within their colleagues and for their bosses. So it's important as a manager to be fully aware of all the management techniques, take on board the advice that you're given by either mentors, your own boss, or your HR department, to make sure that your management skills as a manager are tip-top. A poor physical working environment. Now, going through an office move as we are moving to a much larger office with a lot of air, light, space, and hopefully a quieter environment than we're in the moment. We're overcrowded at the moment. It's a low ceiling. We're too close to each other. When one person's on the phone, we can all hear it. Two people on the phone, and it becomes a problem. So have a look around your team's working environment. Is it a pleasant place to be? Really, that's it. Would you, as an individual, want to walk into that work environment and perform to your best of ability? The one thing that I was very interested in when I was thinking about these things is the call center environment. And, space is always at a premium in a call center, but in my own exploration of how we can reduce noise levels in a very generous work environment, there are many acoustic technologies that can reduce sound levels and therefore reduce stress levels within a working environment. So if you have a call center based or a lot of people in one room who are always constantly communicating, then it might be a good idea to have a look at the acoustics, have a look at the air quality, where, I mean, on today, it's meant to be the hottest day this week for us in Yorkshire. So be aware that people are not going to be performing to their best and might be stressed out during that day because they're just physically uncomfortable. So pay attention to your working environment. I think it does have a much more, it's much more impactful than you actually believe it to be. So do have a look at that one as a manager. So how can you help your employees overcome particular stress? So just some key things here. Making sure that they can cope with demands, and that means communicating with them. Control, allow them to have more say in the approach to work. So when you're actually having that one-to-one about how they're performing, how they're feeling, make sure that you employ SMART again. So when you're arranging any deadlines, any goals, make sure they're specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, and time-bound. You really can't go wrong with that. Make sure that you're providing support. So we encourage managers to have regular one-to-ones. They may be monthly, weekly, whatever your rhythm needs to be. And then support them. So when you are actually in those meetings, make sure that you're providing that encouragement, as well as listening very carefully to what their concerns actually may be. As a manager, it's not a level playing field in a lot of ways. We have our own issues at work. We have our own stress levels, concerns and anxieties. But as a manager, do we need to put those wholly on one side? No, I don't think so. I think we need to promote a working environment that is healthy. It's part of our responsibility as a manager, as a business owner, to ensure that the people who are working for us are productive and well at work. So promoting positive working to avoid that conflict, and also quickly responding to unacceptable behaviour. We actually have a lot to deal with this in HR over a number of our clients. And we're talking to people who are new team leaders, supervisors, and they just don't really know to handle unacceptable behaviour in their teams. What is unacceptable behaviour? That depends on the work environment, custom and practice, etc. But if you see something and you know it is wrong for your environment, step on it. Now, how you might do that is take that person to one side, make sure that you understand the reasons for why they were behaving in that way, and make it very clear to them that they need to respond in a better way. So I think that's quite critical, because we do allow a lot of poor behaviour from colleagues, our own management, and that will just drip in and make your work environment unhealthy. So we also go into our clients and make sure that we actually define the roles and responsibilities. Creating a boundary around a role allows a person actually to be more empowered than less empowered. So when you're talking about that, you give them, this is your tasks, this is your bubble, this is your comfort zone, and giving them pathways when they want to step out of that comfort zone. So that's creating a boundary, saying this is your level of responsibility, and when you need to move out of there, then you need to go to X, Y, and Z, or do A, B, C. So defining a role through the job description removes ambiguity and will actually respond to a lot of stress-related concerns. Organizational change and upheaval, yes, it's stressful. The best thing you can do when you're going through a change program is communicate, and then communicate again. Now, communicate isn't about telling, it's about ensuring that people are listening as well and promoting change. So when we go through a change, and that might just be a restructure, no job losses, roles changing, people moving desks. Within that, make sure that you are positively communicating to the team in whatever medium is acceptable. So that might be face-to-face, notice boards, emails, newsletters, whatever you can get out there, posters, so that people understand why change is happening, and that the other side of that particular change should be better, because we don't want to make change that makes things worse. So I'm just trying to move on my slides. Realizing an employee is actually stress. So one, you should always be prepared to support and help. Yes, your personal feelings are like, oh God, I'm stressed too. Why on earth are they taking time off? I need them here. So as a manager, we need to put aside all those personal feelings and then focus on the individual to understand why they are actually under pressure. So what you're looking for is changes in usual behaviour. How they interact with colleagues is very important. Being a bit snippy, or not talking at all, responding badly, taking a few more fag breaks, loo breaks, not talking as much as they would do, over talking. So any sort of changes in the way that they behave, changes in standard of their work, because although the law separates conduct and capability, they affect each other. So if somebody's conduct is a bit skew-if, that will be reflected in their work, and vice versa. So also look for being tired, lack of sleep, being withdrawn, and not taking interest in tasks that they would have enjoyed previously. Increase in sickness, absence, and turning up late to work. Those are kind of final things that we see happen. There's a lot more indicators leading up to stress, rather than just taking a day off or taking a fortnight off and suddenly you've got stress, depression, anxiety, whatever the GP is going to put down on that sick note. So that's kind of an escalation of things. So changes in behaviour. If you are doing a management role, you should be watching how your people are reacting, interacting all the time. You can't keep your head down because you've got responsibilities for people. So you should be picking up on that, and then also making sure that you can challenge that behaviour. So challenging that behaviour or talking to your employee, critical, communicate, make sure that they know that you know that they're going through something. So invariably, a team manager doesn't stick up their hand and say, I am stressed, I need help. You have to watch for those indicators. Yes, somebody running out from their desk in tears, that's a very good indicator that something is wrong. So what you need to do is, if you're recognizing something, pick your moment. It might not be immediate. It might not be during the day. It might be towards the end of the day, but pull them into a private space. Make sure that you can't be overheard or disturbed if you're not already in that particular location. What you need to do is make sure, if the team members come to you, thank them for exploring how they're feeling at work, but then raising that point that you need to make of, your behavior has changed, what is going on? We need to have a private chat about X, Y, and Z. And what you're going to do with those X, Y, and Zs is provide evidence of changes in behavior. So that person can, one, understand that you have taken on board these situations, you are watching them and are concerned, concern being the highest level of those. So you can say, when you did X, Y, and Z, when you snapped at Sally, what was going on with you? And open the conversation, making sure that they know that this is a private space where they can talk about issues. I wouldn't approach highly confidential, because in management, it's a difficult one to tread when you are looking at the well-being and performance of an employee but also taking on the fact that they are going to disclose some private information to you. Be careful about ensuring that if you do have to disclose any personal information, be that to your boss or your HR team, endeavour to get the individual's permission so that you can talk about it and get support for you as a manager and not only for the individual. Try to identify what the cause is, because it might not be about work. It might be a home thing, which could either be long-term or temporary. And then discuss with the individual potential solutions. I can't give you a list of potential solutions because actually they vary according to the individual. Some of the things that we have put in place is taking a sabbatical in the extreme sense, encouraging a person to maybe take sick leave because they are unwell. Looking at their work environment, any particular issues they have with colleagues, and ensuring that they know that you are supporting them, but also you can't fix everything. So bear in mind that if they're suddenly wanting to move their desk away from Sally because they don't like her, might be more difficult, because then you would disrupt to the rest of the team. You might not have another location, or it's necessary that for them to be working closely together because they're part of a process or a team. If the cause actually relates to you as a manager, usually they're not talking to you directly. They will be talking to your senior manager, or talking to HR about their issues, and it will come to you indirectly. Don't be frightened of that. Yes, it might be a reflection on your management style with that individual, but these styles can be changed. You might not actually be doing anything wrong. It might be the individual having to adjust to a different working environment, etc., and they don't understand the type of management that is in style in that particular environment. But if they have escalated it to human resources, we know that multiple things can affect an individual's stress levels. And although they might be directing it at one particular point, and that might be the manager, there will be other issues as well. So we will always look to find the solutions to that particular problem and make sure that the manager has all the tools, the correct training, coaching to be able to deal with that situation. And if there is a problem in the management style, then we will hopefully help that individual address it. So talking is the biggest thing that you can do with anybody with stress issues, because you're opening the door to longer term communication and hopefully building up trust with your employee that you can actually support them. So we talked a little bit about how you might support them. You might make changes. They need to be reasonable for the business, but also they can be temporary or permanent. It might be very small changes, so don't hesitate to look at the minutiae of the role. And even if you think it's a very, very minor thing, for example, Sally always comes back late from lunch, so I'm always late having to go. That creates stress. I'm waiting, I'm hungry, I'm wanting to take a break. So it might be as simple as talking to other team members, etc. It may take a number of meetings. These things don't get resolved in one-off hits, because inevitably you're going to have to review the situation, even if you have just one or two meetings, because you want to make sure that those solutions that you put in place, if they're temporary, don't need to be extended, or are working for that individual. So you do need to ensure that you advise the employee you're not going away soon. It's going to be a regular meeting until we get back onto an even keel and that individual is performing well. Obviously, we're all in hierarchies in work, and you don't have full authority for everything. So make sure that you gain authorization for any changes. How do you explain things are changing? particularly to work colleagues. We know that the gossip mill already knows that that person is stressed, and they've already identified they're having one-to-ones with their manager, and things are changing. We have to communicate sensitively with the team to make sure that they understand things. You might want to give them some information about colleagues with stress. We've got a whole bank of information, links to different providers of information, and we've got a couple of leaflets as well you can use. So agree with the individual what they're going to say, because you don't want to release sensitive information that's going to make that employee's working life worse, or release confidential information that they will then be very, very upset about. So agree what your communication is going to be with the rest of the team, and also your management as a manager. Monitoring employee, well, what I said was you have to keep an eye on them. I would say that you need to keep an eye on them and have regular meetings for a good 6 months until you know that the problem is well over, that any solutions are in place and working well. So planning those one-to-ones. As a general rule, we're always talking about it as HR people. The best route to good management is having regular one-to-one updates and feedback with your employee team. So every individual gets to sit down with their manager at some point so that they can have some one-on-one time. If you're not doing that, start doing it. And if you don't have the tools to do that, we can provide you tools to help you have a really good one-to-one meeting with your employee. So it's continual conversation, continual change, continually asking for authorization. A lot of changes, there's no financial impact, to be honest. They can be very, very simple changes. They might impact on other team members, and that's where communicating with them is really important. But most of the solutions are no cost to the business, so you should be able to put them through, or entirely within your remit to give. So, you as a manager can make minor changes, and you don't have to escalate it and ask for authorization. You might like to check with HR that it's a good idea, though. So you're monitoring your employee, and that's really very, very critical. So what are the from a well-being point of view, now we've talked about stress and we've talked about dealing with an individual with stress and the causes of stress. Well-being. Well-being is a real buzzword, and comes with employee engagement, feedback, etc. What can you do as an individual? Because we talk about well-being, and there's lots of companies out there providing well-being programs around nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, yoga, tai chi, and it can be a really, really good promotional exercise. However, a lot of business can't afford to do that. Neither do they have the time to do that. So what you need to do as a manager is look for ways to improve day-to-day working life for your team. My philosophy on this is, if you get the basics right, the rest will follow. You don't need to spend lots of money on a nutritionist coming in to do seminars with individuals in their lunch break, where you as a manager can have a regular one-to-one and make them feel better that way. So regular feedback from your employees via one-to-ones or whatever system you're using. Always remain open to your team and potential problems. So keep an eye out for those red flags. Communicate. So you're already getting the regular feedback and you're communicating through the one-to-ones. Then you have your team meeting structure, so you can communicate in that way, and just on those informal bases. Be flexible. What we're hearing a lot at the moment is that the workforce in the UK is looking for flexibility. We're looking for less regimented day-to-day working patterns. We want work-life balance. We have families to take care of. The traditional roles are changing. The traditional family is changing. Therefore, the workplace needs to change too and become as flexible as our day-to-day lives are today. So think about better ways of managing your team to be flexible. Yes, there are constraints. We need to be, for example, open 9 to 5 because that's when our customers call us. Shift patterns. You can cover a phone with shift patterns. People starting early, people starting late. It's being open to new ideas and also discussing with your team on what is acceptable to them. You might want to introduce flexi time, time off in lieu. You have to also work for not only the flexibility within working hours, working environment, working from home. Giving them the tools to be able to do that properly is a critical thing. So if you're expecting somebody to work from home, you must give them all the tools and equipment to be able to do that. There's a lot of health and safety rules around permanently working from home, but occasional days, there's no real requirements. So think about being flexible within the constraints of your organization. Don't just think, no, we can't do that. Think, how can we do that? Mental health first aid training. Now, this is a new thing that seems to be coming more and more to the fore, and I really support this. I think that not only should we be have first aid aiders in our businesses, but there's this added benefit of having some mental health first aid training, so that those individuals who agree to be first aiders also can be aware of those very sometimes subtle pointers that say to somebody who might be having a problem with their mental wellness. I think mental health first aid training also works to identify more serious conditions, not identify, but from a workplace environment, learn how to cope with more serious mental illness issues and how they might present at work. Another action for your managers: call your HR department, call your HR consultant. You know who your contacts are for breathing space. Pick up the phone, talk to us about it, discuss it, brainstorm some solutions. We'll coach you through the processes. We'll keep it legal. We'll also work with managers to put together a good business case if that needs to happen, to influence management, their leaders, etc., so that actually what we agree can be implemented in a efficient and productive way. And also being realistic about things and whether it is something that we can do. So, that's 5 actions on the very base level for managers that I think that you can turn around and do as soon as you're off the phone. There's no issues there and there's no cost with them. So we've got some useful links here as well. Now, you might not be able to see them well enough, but we've got ACAS. They've got some great resources. The CIPD, if you Google work-related stress, they've got some really good information on what the law says about stress. We've got some really good information about employer responsibility from High Speed Training. Another good piece of information from a law firm, another really great information from another law firm, and also from the HR magazine as well. These are all just bits of information that you can use to get to resources about stress and how to manage it. From the employee point of view, Breathing Space has also created a leaflet which has resources specific for employees. We do love to encourage employees to do some research, to make sure that they're contacting their GP, to getting the best support that they can possibly give. So those are some links for you as managers. And then if you want to have an issue, call us and we will then send you over the leaflet that we have generated. So you have a kind of a talking point with employees. So it might not be useful in that first meeting, but something you can say, I can give you this leaflet. Do you want it? And then we can look at the additional resources that we can get for you. Companies can also have employee assistance programs, EAP. Now that's basically, they've been around for yonks and they've expanded their services into all sorts of different counselling and coaching. But the basic reason why those existed was that employees in crisis could ring up and speak to a neutral, qualified counsellor. And then the majority of packages also have a free 6 sessions with a face-to-face counsellor. These are generally private. The employer doesn't get to know about the content. Neither do they on occasion know the individual either. They might just have a number at the end of the month that says, you have had 3 employees contact our services. And that's all the information you're going to get. So that's an investment from the company. However, have a look at the company insurances. Sometimes we find that through just general insurance, prior liability, then there is an attached benefit of the EAP. Also have a look at any cash plan benefits that you might have for Simply Health WAP. I know WAP have a really good resource for employee assistance and coaching, which either the company can pay additionally for or the employee gets it and pays for it themselves. So there's lots and lots of places where you can get information and additional resources to support any issues you're going through. So thank you very much for just listening to that overview of what stress is and the different things that you as a manager can implement to helpfully prevent stress in the workplace, but also help you deal with individuals who do have stress or other mental health issues. We're here. Give us a call. Check out our website for information and our contact details. We're moving, so I didn't put the number down on this particular webinar on Friday. So we'll update the contact details via the website. I hope that's been useful for you. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. If you have any questions, please contact us directly. My name is Susie Bogle, and any of my team at Breathing Space will be able to answer any questions. Further, I'd just like to say thank you to our HR administrator, Ellie Crowther, for putting together a lot of this information and also being the author and publisher of our leaflets on stress management. Thank you very much, and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.